You have a full crowd, so just be mindful of other people and the walkways. Try not to move the chairs around too much, just so we can make sure we have a line zigzag through to the exit. Yeah, there's a couple more seats down here if you're coming in. We might have people need to kind of just fill in the extra space standing, because we do have all the chairs out that we're going to put out. So if you can't find somewhere to sit, just kind of stand to the side. We are recording tonight, hopefully going live on Facebook. And if we aren't able to do that, we'll post on YouTube and Facebook after. And we are also recording for something that's being made. I'm not sure, some sort of documentary. We're recording for that, and so if you are not wanting to be recorded, could you just let us know by hand if there's anybody that wants to make sure that they don't get on camera, just so everybody with the camera knows not to film you.
What's the documentary
about? I don't know, honestly.
Can we find out later?
You'll find out. Yeah, you can talk to Jared and Nick, and
if you
don't consent to that,
we'd love to talk to you.
and if you don't want to be in that, make sure they know to contact you and to figure that out. That there's permission to film and all that. All right. My name is Nicole Forrester. I'm the director of Decriminalization of Boulder County. I am on the board. We are a nonprofit based out of Boulder, and I'm on the steering committee of that organization, of our efforts to decriminalize plant medicines in Boulder County, as well as the state of Colorado. We submitted an initiative at the end of January that would decriminalize these plants in the state of Colorado, if voted on in the 2022 election. So that's some of what we're going to talk about tonight. We'll also talk about local stuff, and we have a few people from our steering team here tonight. I think almost all of us are here. One person's out of the country. Everyone else, I think, is here tonight. So I'll just let everyone that's here, that's part of our steering team, introduce themselves before they do whatever they're going to talk about or whatever they're going to lead tonight. And then at the end portion, we will have a few of us come up for an open dialogue with everybody here, just to ask questions, give feedback, speak, and all that. So I'm going to give this away to Kutumi and Andrea Valeska, who are going to open us up. And I'll let them go ahead and introduce themselves however they'd like to. Yeah. Do you want to
on the stage right now.
Do you want to
Hello everybody, my name is Andrea Valeska. I'm originally from Chile. I come from a descendant of the Mapuche tribe, which is a tribe down at the end of the Americas. It's an honor to be here today and to have the possibility to do a land acknowledgement and to acknowledge where we are. And with us is Kutumi. He is from Ecuador and he's an elder to me, so give him the possibility to lead us today in this land acknowledgement.
Hello everybody, so my name is Kutumi. I come from the colonial land of Ecuador, in South America. I come from the Quechua people, and we're here to do land honoring not acknowledgement, but actually honoring, really paying respect to the elders of these lands. And I'd like to invite my two sisters, if you would like to come, Felicia and Gabby. So we'll do it in the traditional ways. We do a prayer song, which is Icaros, and they usually come as they go, and they're a combination of my native tongue and also Spanish. If everybody's comfortable standing up, it will be a lot better. If they're not, that's totally okay. Permisito, tribus de esta tierra. Permisito para caminar en buena relación con ustedes. Permisito para estar aquí en armonía, en paz y buena relación con ustedes. Permisito para estar aquí en buena relación, en armonía con ustedes. Wish mamaita, wish papaita, wish Ayudita divina, permisito para estar aquí. Wish desde los cóndores te saludo. Wish mamaita, wish papaita, abuelitos. Just wanted to name, good to remember that the spirits of the Arapaho, the Cheyenne, the Ute people, and many indigenous more that will continue to walk in these lands. We're still here. We're in the water, we're in the land, we're in the air, we're in the trees, we're everywhere. Many of us have been displaced, and we're really wanting to come back. So really having that in heart. I don't belong here, I belong to the South. But I feel the pain of my brothers and sisters that are not here. And I'm trembling because this is really intense for me, to be here. I really feel that the Spirit is calling us back, calling them back. And we need to create a space for them. We really need to do the good work to know that many of us, we don't belong here, on the spiritual realm. but we're in the physical realm too, so we do belong to some extent. But we want to create that bridge to heal the relationship to the spirit realm, because these tribes are still here. They feel us every single day. I feel them every single day. We need to learn to walk in right relationship to them. So thank you.
Wish to mama, wish to baba, wish to it. Wish to mamaita, papaita, wish to inti, wish to wish, pachamam, wish to. Lito, walito, wish to. Uyaloma, wish to. Wish to inka, kichwa mamaita, wish to papaita, wish to. Lito, arabaho, you say, wish to. Cheyenne, wish to. Indígenas de esta tierra, permitido, armonía, bendición, wish to, wish to.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Boulder. Been living here for 2 years now. My name is Gabriela. My family comes from all areas of northern Mexico. I'm a Virarica descendant, the original caretakers of Peyote medicine, and I've been fortunate to have tremendous healing from these medicines. And over the years, I've learned many things. I've learned mostly how to come back to my lineage and all the healing that I needed to do in my lineage. And now more walking in right relationship with these medicines here on these lands. My family was also displaced, and I'm doing everything that I can to walk in a good way for my ancestors, for these medicines. I am a caretaker of these medicines. I've had lots of teachings from them, and they are medicines. And I say medicines because we can take them when we need healing, not recreationally, not to have fun, but coming in a good way and in reciprocity with indigenous communities. I do believe that we should all have access to these medicines, but when we're approaching indigenous communities, when we're giving back. And so I ask all of you to take care of these medicines. We're all children of the earth. We've all been displaced. We're all indigenous to this earth. And that starts with recognizing that nature is an extension of us, not separate. We have a responsibility to protect these medicines and to protect the tribes that take care of them. So I watched a documentary yesterday of Said Atkinson, and he was a Black Yoruba student who was wrongfully stopped, apprehended. I watched the video with him last night. The documentary is This Is Not Who We Are. And this thing just keeps coming around. But this is very sacred. It's very sacred for us. It's not a renaissance. We've been taking care of them for millennia. I was just telling my sister in Zacatecas, Mexico, they found remnants that these tribes have been working with them for at least 26,000 years. So we've been taking care of them for at least that much and longer. And I know it has brought great healing to you, but in this moment in time, I think we're well aware of what it takes to be an ally, the responsibility that comes with, and that does mean stepping back and letting indigenous people lead the way, and allowing us to have, thank you for allowing us to have a space here to talk, to make this prayer, to do this land acknowledgement, so that we can all do this healing together. Colonization hurt all of us, and we have different ways of healing that. I don't think this capitalistic system has been very good for our spirits and our soul, and these medicines have helped us have helped us see that. So I'm here for unity, I'm here for love, but I also stand firmly in protecting these medicines. And thank you so much.
I'm Felicia Chavato, daughter of Josefina Reyes, granddaughter of Esperanza Bustamante Perez y Yolanda Salcedo Chavato. Just feeling really honored to be here this evening on this Ute Arapaho Cheyenne land. I just want to honor this beautiful earth here, these mountain spirits here, for allowing us to be here, supporting us and guiding us, all of us. And I just want to express gratitude that these conversations are happening and that this space is open here for us right now. I am mestiza, I am of mixed lineage, Mexico, but also many tribes of the U.S. Southwest and Mexico. I have all mixed all the way down from Oaxaca in my lineage. Some Yaqui as well, some Huerarica as well. My ancestors have been working with the medicine of peyote for many, many centuries. And I feel really passionately about protecting them. And so I think it's really important that we're all approaching these conversations from a place of acknowledging how many of these medicines are endangered. They have been over-harvested and exploited, even within some native traditions. And it's really important to protect them, find every which way that we can to protect them. And yeah, my brothers and my sisters here, and everything you said, Gabby, and I just want to acknowledge that the peyote medicine in particular is heart medicine. Shimmering, peyote means shimmering heart. And there's really so many ways that we can access that medicine even without consuming, right? That we can call on that, or these medicine allies without taking, without consuming, without extracting. So I just want to pray for openness to finding ways to heal in right relationship, but also in a way that acknowledges the divinity, the consciousness, and the sensitivity of these allies, these plant allies.
Thank you, everybody. I'd like to invite you to close your eyes just for a minute. Just for a minute. If you feel comfortable, or keep your eyes slightly closed, looking down. And I just want to honor everybody here and the organization and the team and the family that is allowing the space for us to be here. This creates a lot of healing to us, to be able to have some space. So just wanted to offer that moment of silence for that. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you again for that beautiful land honoring. My name is Melanie Rose Negrino Rogers, and I'm really excited to be here. My lineage is that I'm Filipino, and I come from originally South Florida, and I've lived in Denver for 14 years. And I would love to tell you also that, I'm going to introduce myself, and then we're going to do a little icebreaker. But first, I'd also like to just take a look around, look to the people next to you, and just see, everybody who's shown up today for this town hall meeting. It's really important as we talk about, kind of the future of some of these initiatives that are happening here in the state and how important it is. And I have to echo that I too also believe in keeping these medicines so sacred. And I believe that in the light of capitalism, we all have to look, pretty much within and, you know, really kind of connect with our own values and what we believe in. A little bit about me is that I am a community organizer, I'm an advocate, and I'm an activist. And I started my advocacy here in Colorado fighting for access to medical cannabis. So in 2015, I started coming to meetings just like this, listening in, you know, when medical cannabis access was really, you know, there were just the original qualifying conditions, and then there was PTSD that was being heard a couple times before it got granted through the state through several bills, and giving access to veterans for PTSD, along with allowing medical cannabis in schools. That brought me to starting an organization called Safe Access Colorado, a chapter of Americans for Safe Access. And in 2019, I helped organize a group of cannabis patient advocates to change the laws to include and further increase medical cannabis access to include autism and also any condition for which an opiate is prescribed. And I found that to be some really valuable work and honorable work, as you know, I'm about to turn 40, and if you look around, you know, with pharmaceuticals and what we've been seeing lately, even in the public and here in Denver with certain pharmaceuticals, I just believe in other natural alternatives for healing and for well-being and for spirituality. And so medical cannabis is really what got me into standing up for what I believed in. And then in 2019, I'm also one out of 6 petitioners that was part of Initiative 301. Raise your hand if you know about Initiative 301, which was to decriminalize psilocybin mushrooms in Denver, Colorado. Thank you. And so myself and actually a lot of familiar faces here, Andrea, Travis, Del, Nicole, we were part of a really community-led movement that was able to do the unthinkable, which was really, you know, decriminalizing psilocybin mushrooms for their right to heal. And that led me further on, that actually really led me to so much community involvement, going to conferences and learning, and it led me to even my own personal healing journey of looking at other plant medicines for my own healing and healing of my own trauma. And so I believe these medicines are sacred. I believe they have amazing, they have the spirit, they have a way where together as a community we can heal generational trauma together. And so I'm really fortunate enough that led me to my own path of healing. And in 2020, after, you know, those that voted, thank you very much again, anyone that voted or petitioned, you know, to spark that movement, because as you can see of what it's done across the nation and across the world, we have never been in a more ripe situation right now where we're talking about other modalities, other sacred medicines, and our use and our connection with them for our own healing. So that is something so magical and spiritual. And so thank you again to the stewards of the medicines, the community that has been keeping them sacred and providing, you know, community support. And then in 2020, I got the call right during the pandemic where I was recruited to go work and campaign for Decriminalize Nature DC. So that last week of where we had to gather signatures, and they were having kind of a very difficult time, you know, canvassing, gathering signatures to get this in the ballot on DC to decriminalize plant medicines and mushrooms. And so a group of us went out to DC, and that was also very profound to be in DC and again talking to people about this and being able to have open conversations like this. And so that led me to being part of that campaign and also seeing what's come out of that. And the reason why I'm up here talking to you is I with Nicole, I'm a co-proponent for the statewide initiative, the 2022 statewide Colorado initiative to decriminalize entheogenic plants and fungi. And so I just thank you for showing up today. You know, step one about being an advocate is showing up. So again, let's give ourselves a round of applause. And then a little bit more about the work that I do is that I care very much for standing up against oppressive systems. So for the last 4 years, I have been hosting a group of individuals, and I have been putting together a free record sealing clinic in Denver. So we pro bono will work with, we've recruited some pro bono lawyers, and we will look at your personal record and see if there's any cases that are eligible for sealing. And I love how our head legal counsel talks about that, is that we're balancing the scales of the system by doing this record sealing work, because we know that these oppressive systems exist. And so I just, and then in 2020 I started a nonprofit called Expunge Colorado, and just recently we got our own 501c3 status, and we're actually also running a bill through the legislature right now that would automatically seal eligible criminal cases, which is huge, because if you think of like the hurdles that people have when they have a criminal charge, it keeps them from housing, Section 8 housing, keeps them from financial aid. And so again, my passion for standing up for community-led initiatives and amplifying social causes is what brings me here today to introduce myself, to introduce the initiatives that we're going to talk to you about today. And so I just wanted to, again, just take a moment and really just, give, a warm welcome, and thank you for showing up. Thank you, Trident, for bringing us here today. And then let's do a little fun icebreaker. So instead of clapping, we're gonna snap, okay? So right now, who here is from Boulder County? All right. How many people came outside Boulder to be here today? All right. How many people, and then I'm gonna talk about coffee and tea, and I would like to know, who are the coffee drinkers in this group? Who are the tea drinkers? All right, excellent. And then how many of you have had a mystical, experience with these sacred earth medicines before? And in that experience, how many of you believe that it transformed you to be a little bit better version of yourselves? How many people agree that it actually brought you more closer to your ancestral lineage of who you are inside? All right. Thank you so much. I'll be around for the Q&A. Again, I'm just really excited to be here and to see all of your faces, and thank you for showing up. Step one of activism and being involved is really showing up today, so thank you all. Thanks.
Thank you. Del, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure.
We'll hear from Del Jolly real quick, another member of our local steering team.
Hi, everybody. I'll be brief. I was part of the Decrim Denver with Mel and Travis and multiple other people who've helped support that. Before that, I worked for Charlotte's Web. It was that little girl having seizures that kind of changed my heart. Embarrassingly so, I was, don't hate me for this, against marijuana 8 years ago. And it wasn't until I saw her having seizures and me as a father realizing that I was a huge part of the problem. Huge part of the problem, having an opinion on something that I really didn't have a right to have an opinion on because I was uneducated. So, worked for Charlotte's Web, had a toad ceremony that sent me to just understand that this is my path to help and do whatever I can to push this forward. And so I found about the 2019 decrim movement and did what I could there. And then since then I've started a nonprofit called Unlimited Sciences, and we are working with Johns Hopkins to measure how people use psilocybin in the real world, not on a couch at Johns Hopkins. That's how people are using these things. What can we learn from that to validate the people and show that we know what we're doing? We should be the educators here, not pharmaceutical companies or what's to come. But really grateful to be part of this, and the more I dive into this and the more I've worked with a lot of the players in the space, whether it's business or nonprofit or any of these things, academic or pharma, I really feel that decrim nature has the right message, has the right, they're doing everything for the right reasons. And that's what everybody here is decrim nature. And so I'm just here to do what I can, and hopefully my studies will be able to provide data that will help city council members understand that the sky is not falling. It's actually getting a lot better when people use these medicines, and grateful to be part of this in any way that I can. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So I'll start us off, just kind of, oh, he's gonna do a part after me. Rumsey's here, another member of our steering team, and he's gonna speak after me. If you want to say anything real quick, you can jump in. Okay, I didn't mean to skip through it. It's figured when you talked. So you've heard from Andrea, who's part of our steering team, Melanie, Dell, myself and Rumsey, and then we have two more people, Nathan Bloodsworth, who's also part of the NOAC Society, and then Charlie Grunwald, who is not here tonight. Nathan and Charlie are not here tonight, but that's our local team. So I'm gonna kind of start just painting the picture for you, why we're here, why we're doing this, and how it has progressed to us petitioning to be on the ballot in 2022. And then from there we will hear from Rumsey about really action steps and events that are coming up in Boulder. We organized first and foremost to organize the community in Boulder. I think anybody that was involved in I-301 knew how huge of a deep breath we needed to take after that campaign won. And so we've been taking that breath for, I guess, a couple of years now. And I want to acknowledge, I think a lot of people here maybe are feeling like we want to see all of this policy change happen, yesterday. We want to be able to go buy mushrooms in a dispensary. We want to whatever. There's maybe some people here that represent that side, and then there's some people over here that are more towards, let's go slow, let's get this figured out, let's create this policy in the most equitable way possible. So I do just want to acknowledge that we've touched on, a lot more of this side of that spectrum, and to thank everyone here for acknowledging the many reasons why we all might be here, and the tension that we're all holding to just really, acknowledge those perspectives and how they show up and manifest in this space. After I worked on I-301 just as a volunteer. My background's in psychology and speech language sciences. I've worked in the healthcare field since I was 16 years old. And I have a neurological disorder that psilocybin treats. So that's how I came into this space using this medicine when I was a teenager to treat that. I always say, the best thing the Western medical system could do for me was give me an opiate addiction at age 16. I took a tiny bit of a mushroom at age 18, and I was cured of my cluster headaches for 3 years. So that's, my testimony in this space. That's kind of the extent that I speak about it publicly. But yeah, after Denver won in 2019. Shortly after that, the city of Oakland passed a resolution through their city council that decriminalized more than just psilocybin, the rest of the Schedule I entheogens. And they did it through lobbying their city council. And so I reached out to their team because I felt like a lot of the values and ideas and momentum that I was hearing here on the ground in Colorado were represented in the action that they were taking and the community that they were building. So I did want to start off by introducing kind of just Decriminalize Nature at the national level. We are our own separate organization. Decriminalize Nature National is based out of Oakland, and they have sort of helped other groups get started all across the nation. I think there's over 100 cities across the world starting Decriminalize Nature groups. And it's not one organization with chapters, it's a movement. And they are here to help us with what we need and to also understand that every city and every state is going to look a little bit different. I wanted to start by just playing a video that they put out recently, kind of just introducing the movement. It's about a minute long. Decriminalize Nature has a 60% Indigenous representation on their board. And that was a big part of the reason why I reached out to them originally, was wanting to hear the perspective that they gave. And of course, there's not, one Indigenous perspective, one Indigenous solution, one Indigenous way to represent this space. But I was seeing really a lack of that here in Colorado and wanted to help figure out how to bridge those gaps and have those conversations. So I'm going to kind of just guide us through a short presentation, and then we're going to hear from Ramsey, and then we will do a question and answer open dialogue at the end. We are able to stay until Trident closes at 9, so we will extend that dialogue past 8 for anybody that is able to stay later. I'm going to time check real quick. Cool. We're more or less on time. All right, so I'm going to click through again. All right. Yeah, I think I already said all of this, but the point I really want to hit on right now is that we organized at the local level. The momentum and the speed that we are, committed to going at is local. We want to see local-driven policy. There has been no other city in Colorado to pass another decriminalization initiative or resolution since Denver did 2 years ago. And so I think a lot of us are questioning, why is statewide policy happening faster than that? And we're going to hit on some of that tonight to explain why we're campaigning at the state level and to explain kind of some of the other things that happened at the state level before we submitted our language. But I do just want to hit on that we are, first and foremost, really committed to organizing Boulder County, to leading Boulder County, and to figuring out how to pass equitable, good, inclusive policy in Boulder, and to honor that the speed that local communities are going at is seen in this space and not steamrolled by out-of-state money, out-of-state interest, and all of the things that might be dictating some of the other campaigns and bills that are happening in this space. So you can go ahead and click. Our current missions right now are to organize and pass decriminalization policy in Boulder County. That's either going to come through a city council resolution or a voter initiated ordinance. We have also proposed Initiative 61. You can look it up on the state website and read all of our public record documents for that. Initiative, I think it's 4950, 58 and 59. If you've heard that there is another entheogen related campaign happening statewide, but that is the other one. That is the one that's going to set up a regulatory model across the state. And so those were proposed before ours. Ours is in a lot of ways a reaction to what we were hearing from the community after those initiatives were put forward to the state. So yeah, you can go ahead and click. So this is a graphic that I've used a lot of times in a lot of different presentations, just kind of explaining decriminalization and the different kind of access frameworks that we're seeing across our country right now. At the top of the pyramid, it's kind of identifying equity and restriction. So we're thinking about how how many people are able to access, and then also how protected that access is. A big piece of what we are fighting for in this place is not to necessarily expand access of the medicines, create new access, but to protect the rights of people who have always used these medicines, who are using them safely. And all of that's in line with the data that we've seen in places that have decriminalized, that it's not a risk to public health and safety, and that people are using these medicines safely, and we don't think they should be in prison. So when we start advocating for a regulatory system, a tax system, a licensure system, all of that, the arguments and the momentum and the ideology that's driving that is we need to create new access to these medicines. Someone said it really well earlier, and I can't think of how to articulate it now, I'm sorry, but that there's all of these new models coming, and they're kind of steamrolling the traditional way of doing it. They're steamrolling even just individuals choosing how they're relating to these medicines. And so at the top of this, you might have heard of Compass Pathways, MindMed, some of these other groups that are going through the FDA approval process, conventional medicine, synthetic access. And we are all for people choosing how they heal. So if that's the way you want to heal, you should be able to do that. And it's coming. We can't argue with that. It's going to come at some point. But we have to be mindful that if we start there, it's a lot more difficult to open up access and protect the rights of people who are choosing to access outside of that model. Going down the pyramid, we have things like M109 in Oregon, which if you're following that, it's a heavily regulated therapeutic medical model of the psilocybin itself, the fungal material itself. But if you're following sort of the disaster that the bureaucratic process has been, that it's, a good thing to keep in mind is they're the first state that did that. And now Colorado's promoting, or the other group that is proposing an initiative to create a regulatory model has moved a little bit farther down the pyramid. They have a little bit less restricted, regulated facilitator model, but their agenda is to do that same thing. Their agenda is not to fully decriminalize. We don't know what policy they're going to put forward. They have 4 drafts. Some of them have full decrim, some of them don't. But their main objective is not to fully decriminalize. It's to create a restricted, regulated facilitator model. And so that's kind of, we'll hit on that in a second. And then we have partial decriminalization access, which is like M110 in Oregon, which, technically the medicines are decriminalized, but if you are arrested for them or found with them, you pay a fine. So the city and the state is able to profit off of your use. And then you can avoid that fine by entering the behavioral health system as an addict. Maybe some people agree that that's the way to go. Maybe some people agree that's the way to go for other drugs. But for these medicines, we are advocating that we should have fully decriminalized access, so possession, use, all of that, cultivation especially, is not limited. It's not subject to a fine where you're not going to go to jail, but all of your medicine will be seized. You'll have to pay a fine and start all over, or have it on your record, or be labeled an addict and get more behavioral health labels that are going to follow you through the medical system throughout your life. So we are here to stand for full decriminalization access. Groups like Decriminalize Nature, groups like Baysaters for Natural Medicine, and Decriminalize Denver represent, that kind of access. And so when we heard that there was policy being proposed at the state level that was not going to fully decriminalize these medicines, we listened to community and we put that language together and we proposed it to the state. That is why we are campaigning at the state level. Let's see what's next. So this just is another kind of example of decriminalized use versus regulated sale. If you look up our initiative, number 61, the state did label it legalized possession and use of entheogenic medicines. I'll kind of explain that later. We've done a lot to separate decriminalization and legalization, because when we've talked about legalization, we've kind of equated it to regulation and taxation. But now that we are technically making, if our initiative passes, we will make these things lawful. We're trying to kind of, get more detailed on our explanation there. So I did, if you've seen this slide before, I did say decriminalization versus legalization. We're going to call it decriminalized use versus regulated sale. We're advocating for decriminalized use. That's the defunding and deprioritizing of the arrest and prosecution of the adult use of entheogens, natural medicines. This is empowering to individuals and communities because it allows people to continue to use these medicines without fear of arrest. It allows us to stand up here and gather and teach people right relationships with these medicines, responsible use. It allows people that have been practicing underground to feel safer to tell their story to researchers, like the research that Del was speaking about, and like research that NOAC Society is doing with underground psilocybin practitioners in Colorado. It allows us to get data that we haven't gotten in the past, and it allows us to understand and to safely educate our communities together instead of having a top-down model tell us how we should be using these, deciding who is and is not a criminal. Regulated sale is the creation of a framework to direct the sale, distribution, and use of entheogens and natural medicines. Regulated sale is empowering to regulatory agencies and people that are profiteering. We're seeing people show up in this space starting mushroom companies that have never grown a mushroom before, and they're ready to go, and they're well funded. I don't want to make this a black and white issue where we're against something. Think of it more as the pyramid. We are fighting that these policies start with full decriminalization so that nobody is going to prison. And we want to continue to call attention to the difference between that and creating a whole new model with rules and licensure and taxation and profit and incentive to arrest people that are not practicing within that model. We want to lay the groundwork so that for the next decade and centuries to come, policy in Colorado is equitable from the beginning. It's exciting to think about the ways that Colorado was the first one to decriminalize psilocybin. But with that comes political viability and interest from out-of-state well-funded groups, and that's what we're seeing happen now, propose these statewide policies to create licensure frameworks. These are not funded by Coloradans. They've actually removed, in some of their drafts, restrictions of out-of-state funders, out-of-state people coming in to start clinics, and all of that. Research stopped on these medicines, and we're just kind of at the point where we're starting to see a new, renaissance of research. And as these conversations have increased, we've started to hear some stories that maybe the data they're getting from that research doesn't represent the perspectives of the people that were being researched. There's a big difference between saying, I am healing myself with this medicine, I should not be in prison, and I am knowledgeable enough to heal another person, have them pay me, and call myself a treater of mental illness. So I just want to consider, let's think about the difference there and ground that in what we are fighting for, that nobody should be in prison, that we're still learning how to use these medicines, and that when, profit is our motivator, when we're the first ones to try to do that, it's a lot. You can go ahead and go. We're going to show now our initiative, and then we're going to show our fiscal review from the state. So this is just a quick summary of what we're doing. We're revising the Controlled Substances Act, so in that we're sort of restricted in how much policy we can change. There's a lot of things, that people want to see in this policy that are things that can happen later on down the road. Something that comes up a lot is expungement and record sealing. We agree with that, and it's a lot, something that comes through an act or something that comes through later on. And so our initiative is sort of limited to that. We are just revising the Controlled Substances Act. And it will make the possession, use, cultivation, production, sharing, giving away, and delivery of psilocybin, psilocin, ibogaine, mescaline, and dimethyltryptamine no longer a violation of Colorado law, preventing investigation, detention, search, seizure, arrest, or other legal penalties. And something to note there is that mescaline does not include peyote. Peyote is scheduled separately from from mescaline. The entire peyote plant is scheduled and protected under its own section of the Colorado Substances Act. Mescaline, which is inside, I think, 78 other types of cacti, is scheduled under just mescaline, not specifically named by the type of cacti. So the interesting thing here is that the psychoactive substance inside of the plants is scheduled, whereas peyote, the entire peyote plant is scheduled. Similar to cannabis, how THC is scheduled and then the entire cannabis plant is scheduled. But with mushrooms and the other cacti and iboga and the other plants that contain ibogaine, the plant matter itself is actually not scheduled. So it's just kind of an interesting thing to think about as we see these laws start to appear. You can go ahead and go next. This is our proposed initiative. This was the very first draft that we sent in. We had our legislative review that had us change wording. No substance can change, but like order of words and punctuation and that kind of stuff. Capitalization did change, but I don't have that one up here. But if you want to go ahead and look at this, take a picture of this. The most revised one should be on the state website by now, but I actually don't know if it is. But nothing of the content changed. It was just capitalization and those kinds of things. We can't change the intention after it's been submitted. Unless we would submit another draft and go through a whole other review process. You can find all of this too on the state's website. You can find it on our social media. There's links to it. We're Decriminalize Nature Boulder, Decriminalize Nature Colorado. Decrim Nature Colorado, Decrim Nature Boulder on Facebook and Instagram. You can go ahead and go to the next one. And then we're talking about our fiscal review. So the state reads our initiative and then they decide how much it's going to cost to implement it. What we're going for here is short, easy to understand. This could be the first time voters ever see something like this. We didn't want it to be 16 pages long. We wanted it to be half a page. Easy to read, shorter than a lot of the emails I send. And our fiscal review I find really exciting. Two of the key points that we think are really powerful that the state found was that fewer individuals charged with the possession and use of entheogens, decreased costs to the courts, Department of Corrections, and local law enforcement agencies. We are essentially defunding the police by doing this. Fewer incarcerated individuals will strengthen the labor force and increase income and spending in communities. You can go ahead and click next. If anyone wants to take a picture of this is also public record. You can find it on that same website I mentioned. We'll go ahead and leave it up for just a second if anybody wants that. All right, we can go ahead. Okay, so then these are just, what happens after decriminalization. I think a lot of people think that, we're fighting for decriminalization only. I hear that get said. We're fighting for decriminalization first, period. Nobody goes to jail. We have not figured out what this can look like equitably as a community, and we need time to do that. I hit on a lot of these points: education and research opportunities, no significant threats to public health and safety found in any of the cities that have decriminalized. The creation of equitable policy change because it allows us to come together and talk with less fear. And then something that I'm not going to get too into tonight, but we are advocating for open task forces. Anything where decisions made about these medicines is not going to be decided by a small amount of people, but it's going to increase community engagement. Denver's I think maybe DC, but a lot of the decrim nature cities have not included task forces, so they haven't upon passing policy, handed everything over to like 10 people. That's what we're seeing everything get so caught up in Oregon, is this task force that they have created that's sort of been a disaster. You can go ahead and go to the next one. These are how you can join our volunteer lists. This is Decriminalize Nature Boulder County, Decriminalize Nature Colorado. If you'd like to email us, our email is decriminalizeboulder@gmail.com. I'll let everyone take a picture of that. If you're on our email list, I emailed those two things out in the last week. And we can go back to any of these slides later too. I'll give you just a little bit longer. And Ramsey's going to get into how you guys can help when he speaks. We can go ahead and go next, I think. Upcoming events, we have, this is our first fundraiser ever organized, I think, about 2 weeks from now, a little less than 2 weeks. It's going to be at the Riverside here in Boulder. This is a big rally fundraiser for Boulder efforts specifically. If you'd like to get a ticket, they're $33. You can scan the QR code, let people take pictures of that, and then move on, and we can always put it back up later.
And there's flyers all over the walls too.
And there's some up here if you'd like to grab one. We can go ahead and go next. We also have Trident booked. Oh no, I said April 2nd. It's supposed to be April 20. We have Trident booked on 4/20 and May 28th. Skip through that because I don't want people taking pictures of that. It's wrong. Okay. All right. I'm going to pass this on to Ramsey, who can introduce himself, and we'll all come back up here for a Q&A, open discussion at the end.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Nicole. Okay, yeah, so let me introduce myself. My name is Ramsey. I am new to Colorado. I actually moved here a little over a year ago, and previously, before I lived in Colorado, I lived in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where I was a part of the Decriminalize Nature Ann Arbor team. So I would consider myself a veteran in this decrim space, along with so many others on our team. When I was in Ann Arbor, I studied neuroscience at the University of Michigan. And after I graduated, I started working in clinical research. So when you hear about certain companies like Compass or MindMed or Atai doing clinical trials on psilocybin, that was my scene. That was my scene. I was working in the clinical research space. And it's really interesting to see on social media, on, mainstream media news outlets, it's kind of interesting how when things like clinical trials for psilocybin happen, it gets such positive press. And, that's a great thing. It's a great thing to see the cultural tide turning. But, coming from the clinical research space, coming from the pharma space, that has actually endowed me with the knowledge that it is imperative for us to start with decriminalization before these substances go through the FDA route and, get FDA approval, and, people can go to a doctor to get prescribed, to visit a psilocybin psychotherapist where they're going to charge them thousands of dollars for therapy. It's going to be covered by insurance and that whole shebang. So like the whole medical pharmaceutical system in the United States sees the opportunity, and they're trying to kind of prepare for that. And this was kind of already covered. People who want to pursue that route to find healing, there's a whole cohort of people that, probably would never want to have a mushroom experience, with somebody who's not medically credentialed. And they should have that opportunity, but that cannot precede full decriminalization. And the reason for that is the way our medical system is set up in the United States, it's very corporate. And when psilocybin becomes legalized by the FDA, gets FDA approval, there's going to be corporations that are going to be supplying that medicine to the therapists. And then those corporations, once they have that legalization, their bank accounts are going to be loaded. What are they going to do with that money? They're going to hire lobbyists. What are those lobbyists going to do? The lobbyists are going to ask politicians not to move forward with decriminalization And they're going to use all these talking points like, oh, these substances, they're dangerous, they're unpredictable, you need to be in a medically supervised setting, blah, 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 blah. And we want to preclude that from happening. We want to make sure that and we know this is going to happen. FDA trials are already in phase 3. Once they're in phase 3 clinical trials, you're basically on the verge of approval. So psilocybin clinical trials are already in phase 3. That means they're on the verge of getting approval. That means these companies are on the verge of having access to give people psilocybin therapy. And that's good. That's good. People deserve to have that modality, that access to that modality. But decrim first. So just to back up a second, just a little bit about me. So my family comes from Palestine. So we've endured a lot of settler colonialism that is funded by the United States. So I have a strong sense of solidarity with the indigenous people of this country. We have a very similar struggle with displacement and settler colonialism and apartheid and military occupation. So I'm very delighted to see how much the indigenous community is showing up and taking the mic and taking the stage and really exhibiting their voice. It really delights me. So let me just talk about my experience in Ann Arbor. So when the Decrim movement started in Ann Arbor, it was really a community-focused initiative. So Ann Arbor basically took what happened in Oakland and then Santa Cruz. So Oakland was the first city that passed a decriminalized nature resolution. And then Santa Cruz, California was the second city. Soon after those two cities passed a decriminalization resolution, Ann Arbor, we had a local psychedelic society called the Michigan Psychedelic Society, and a lot of us in that group were like, hey, look what Oakland and Santa Cruz are doing. Let's form our own, I don't want to say chapters, they're not chapters. Let's form our own, decrim nature mycelial branch here in Ann Arbor. And we basically just took the template of what they did in Oakland and Santa Cruz and just duplicated it in Ann Arbor. And it's worth noting that when we are doing things on the local level, it's a lot easier to engage with the local representatives. I think, the higher up the ladder you go in government, let's say at the bottom you have local, then you have county, then state, then federal, the higher you go up, that hierarchy, the more corrupt it is, and the more they only want to listen to money. So, statewide, it's kind of, controlled by lobbyists and special interests. Federal level, oh gosh, it's a disaster. But when you're on the local level, that cynicism towards, our politicians isn't quite the same. I think when you start talking to, local city council members, they're not these aloof politicians who funded their campaigns, by lobbies who gave them a lot of money and who have this quid pro where, they're expected to do the bidding of the people that funded their election campaign. That's basically how it's done on state and federal level. But when you're on the local level, these city council members are actually members of the community. They're neighbors. These are people who genuinely care about the community. These are people who, if you make a lot of noise, they will listen, they will hear you. So that was an interesting thing that I discovered working in Ann Arbor, working with the city council, was I kind of entered into the scene kind of like with this cynical attitude towards city council, or I'm like, oh, they're just a bunch of politicians, and I was proven completely wrong. City council members are actually very receptive. They hear you, and despite everything I said, they're still politicians. They still are really risk averse. So they're all worried about getting reelected, and they're all worried about, is this thing, if I advocate for this thing, is this gonna, impugn my political reputation? Is this gonna make it more difficult for me to get reelected? And this is always on the back of their heads. I think there's this quote that half of a politician's time is spent trying to get reelected. So what we did in Ann Arbor, so when we first approached city council, with this, oh, hey, we're trying to get these entheogens decriminalized. At first they were very reluctant. You know, they hear this, I don't know anything about this, blah, blah. They're scared. You know, but what we did was we really kind of like rallied the community. We activated the community. So we got people in Ann Arbor to start emailing the city council members on a mass level. You know, we came up with a list of 20 plus people who would send city council members, you know, an email advocating for the decriminalization of these entheogens. We got people to record video testimonials. People sat in front of a camera. You know, some of these videos were like so like makeshift. It was like somebody just took their phone and it was like vertical orientation and everything. And they just talked about how entheogens help them. And we had about, you know, half a dozen of these videos that we emailed to city council, and that we had events. We had big rallies, we had fundraisers, we had parties where, you know, community showed up, and we actually invited city council to these events. So in Ann Arbor, 2 years ago, we had, you know, a big fundraiser event, and we invited city council to this event, and believe it or not, 3 city council members actually showed up to the event, because we got a lot of people to kind of just like hype it up and tell them to show up, and 3 of them showed up. And, you know, they come in and they see the event, they see how enthusiastic people are, they see that, you know, this is community, it's a representative sample of the local community. It wasn't just a bunch of hippies in a room, it was like actual community. And, you know, when we did the video testimonials, the people who recorded video testimonials, as I get it wasn't just a bunch of hippies. You know, we had a retired kindergarten teacher who was in his 60s. We had a midwife. You know, we had a football coach. You know, we had people who were among the community. And when city council saw these videos, I'm pretty sure, you know, their minds were kind of opened as to, you know, the type of people that, you know, need and use these medicines. You know, it's all of us. It's all of us. And, you know, so we kind of developed a strategy in Ann Arbor in how to approach city council. So, number one, we open minds by appealing to the scientific evidence, all the new research that's coming out, you know, from Johns Hopkins and, you know, whatever research institution is doing, you know, these studies. So we open minds by showing them, you know, the scientific evidence, the research. We open hearts by appealing to, you know, personal testimonials and people's stories. And then we ground everything. We bring it back to the roots by mentioning, you know, the power of the indigenous tradition of these medicines on the land. And, you know, that 3-pronged approach of opening hearts, opening minds, and then grounding it, we found to be very effective. You know, if you've ever tuned into a city council meeting, they tend to be really mundane and boring and banal. You know, the stuff they're talking about is, oh, who is gonna, you know, manage our water meters? Who is gonna plow the snow? Who, like, what are we gonna do about affordable housing? Well, it's a lot of like banal, boring political stuff. So when people show up to city council meetings and, you know, they speak at open comment and they're talking about finding healing of a lifelong, you know, traumatic condition. They're talking about, you know, spiritual transformation. They're talking about, you know, all these really profound things. And then city council members, you know, they kind of, their ears perk up. You know, they get really interested. They're like, oh, this is interesting. And, you know, when you keep on the pressure, you keep on, you know, bugging them. You keep on, you know, activating community, and community shows up and really, you know, communicates to city council that this is something important. They listen. They really do listen. And that was something that caught me by surprise because, you know, as I said, I came into this whole thing with a very cynical attitude towards politicians, but city council members, you know, they are receptive. They do care. So coming from that experience in Ann Arbor, I moved to Boulder a little over a year ago, and basically, you know, like that template has kind of like shown to be, you know, tried and true. I think at this point, 13 cities have passed some sort of decriminalization resolution or ballot initiative. And I think in most of those cases, when a decriminalization resolution is brought to city council, it usually passes with like an amazing majority. So just to give you some context of what happened in Ann Arbor, so we had to run, these campaigns. We ran an email campaign, we ran a video testimonial campaign. This was before COVID, so we had in-person city council meetings. So when we got a bunch of our volunteers to sign up to speak at open comment at the city council meetings, we brought an entourage. We had about 24 people show up into the auditorium where they're having the city council meeting, and then we had about like 4 or 5 of the open comment slots. And every time somebody would go up and speak at the open comment slot, after they were done speaking, our whole section would just start applauding. And we just lit up the whole city council chamber, and they had probably never seen anything like that in years. We just lit the place up. So running these campaigns, showing city council that this is important, really made a big difference. And with all the video testimonials and then inviting them to the event, it finally came to the point where we found a city council member, 2 of them actually, who were willing to sponsor the resolution. So we basically took the language from Oakland and Santa Cruz, and we copied and pasted the resolutions and then swapped out the words Oakland and threw in the word Ann Arbor. And it was really that simple. So we found a couple city council members who were willing to introduce the resolution, and so then the day came where the city council member was actually gonna introduce it to city council. They're gonna do their first reading. And then typically what happens in city council meetings when they introduce a resolution is that first they'll read it the first time and they'll discuss it, and then they'll table it, and then the next city council meeting, in a couple weeks or the next month, they'll bring it back up, they'll read it again, they'll discuss it some more, and then maybe it might take 2, 3, 4 city council meetings before they finally vote on it. So what happened in Ann Arbor was the very day they introduced the resolution, we thought they were just going to read it and table it, the whole shebang. But to our surprise, we all of a sudden hear motion to vote. So then the city council, they motioned to vote on it the day they introduced it, and to our surprise, it passed 11-0. It was unanimous, completely unanimous. That is amazing. That's phenomenal. Psychedelics are more popular than both presidential candidates.
And the mayor in Denver.
And the mayor. Yeah, so, that really just speaks to the power of, speaking our voice, speaking our truth, because, when we talk about how these substances are very powerful, they bring healing, they bring spiritual transformation, they bring creativity, whatever you name it, it's a compelling case. People who are rational and they hear this, they're like, you know what, that makes sense, that makes sense. And in Ann Arbor, that was proved to be true, that, they listened and it worked. So we are trying to kind of take that same momentum, that same energy that has been successful in Oakland, in Santa Cruz, in Ann Arbor, in Washington, D.C., in Detroit, in Somerville, in Cambridge, Massachusetts, Northampton, Westhampton, all these cities that have passed decriminalization. We are trying to kind of take that same energy, that same momentum, and bring it here to Boulder. And the way we do that is, just to reiterate, what Melanie said, is the way we do that is by showing up. That's the first thing we do, is we show up. So for that end, we are going to be organizing an email campaign where if anybody, we'll have a template, and then we give you the template and you say, hi, my name is XYZ, and this is why I believe Boulder should decriminalize. And then we send these emails to City Council, and we'll schedule it. Maybe 2 people will send the email on Tuesday, 3 people will send it on a Wednesday, 4 people on Thursday, and then we just bug the shit out of them. We just annoy the hell out of City Council until they realize that, okay, it is more risky for us to ignore this than it is to acknowledge it. Because that's their thing. They're very risk averse. And then once we show them that this is something that community is activated about, this is something that community cares about, that's how we kind of tip the scales. That's how we reach critical mass and we pass the tipping point. So we're gonna do an email campaign. You can either sign up using the QR code, or I'm gonna pass around this sign-up sheet where you can write down your name, your number, your email, and then I'll reach out to the people who signed up to kind of coordinate the email campaign. So that's one thing, we're gonna do an email campaign where we're just gonna bug the shit out of City Council via email. Number 2, we're doing a video testimonial campaign. If you feel comfortable recording, 2 to 3, maybe even up to 5 minutes, we just have to be mindful of people's attention spans in city council. They're very, very busy people. So the shorter the better, short and sweet. You know, we're gonna start a campaign. If you can record a 2 to 5 minute video explaining why entheogens, why psychedelics have benefited you, why you support decriminalization, we'll pass these videos along to city council. And these videos can be completely private, they can be confidential. The only people that will see them are the people of our team and city council. And it doesn't even have to be you. If you know somebody, if you know a loved one, maybe even if you have loved ones in your family who are maybe more elderly, you know, a grandmother, you know, like all these diversifications, you know, if you diversify the type of people that record these videos, and city council is kind of like more compelled by it. You know, it's a little more convincing to city council if they see a grandmother advocating for entheogens than it is if they see like this hippie with, you know, nothing against hippies. I'm one. So yeah, so if you have if you want to record a video testimonial, or if you have a loved one who would record a video testimonial, we're doing that project as well. And what we do is we actually pair, when we send, so every week we do an email blast. We plan on doing an email blast where, let's just say every Friday at noon, like clockwork, we will send them an email, our team will send them an email that has a video testimonial coupled with a scientific research article. So you open minds, you open hearts. So that's one thing to keep in mind, and if you want to ask out, send messages to loved ones, or if you record your own video, that's super helpful. I think the video testimonials was one of the most powerful components of the movement, and they really convince people. And then finally, the last thing we can do is just show up. So we are having this big fundraiser rally in 2 weeks at the Riverside in downtown Boulder. It's going to be a really fun night. It's going to be jam-packed. There's going to be live music, live painting, silent auction. It's just going to be like an extravaganza. And City Council is going to be invited to this event. So if we kind of like fill the place, and City Council, we're going to invite them to, and they show up and they see how community is activated, they see how passionate people are about this. And we're going to invite the press. There's going to be a documentary crew. There's going to be photographers. And then the press breaks and the city council sees it. You know, all these things are part of the process. All these things are convincing. So yeah, so just show up. So we're planning on having events, we're planning on having community rallies, and you know, the power of this movement really is held in the power of community. So if we really come together, we really leverage our influence, we really use our voice, they will hear it, they will listen, and we will win. And I think that's all I have to say.
Thank you. I did want to show that video real quick. It's like a minute long, and then we'll move on to Q&A. Chad, do you want to come up and talk about the magazine instead of me while I'm pulling the video up? Chad, who's helping us out tonight, is going to talk about a project he's working on. That's really amazing.
Thank you. Hey guys, how are you? First of all, I just wanted to say thank you to all you guys who are putting this together. Thank you for the work you're doing as a member of community, and as a plant medicine user, I'm just really grateful to be in this space. Also, thank you for the land honoring ceremony in the beginning. So my name's Chad. I am a PR coordinator for Psychedelic Club. Some of you guys might know me from the Psychedelic Club chapter here at Boulder. And right now I'm working as a PR person for this new magazine, which is called Entheoscope. And it's basically a psychedelic magazine. It started out of different chapters from Psychedelic Club collaborating together. Like the Berkeley chapter, our chapter here in Boulder, and the Rutgers chapter, and it just formed into its own thing. We're about to actually release our 3rd issue soon. We're taking submissions for that. And our 2nd issue was just released. So if you look over on the wall right here, you'll see all kinds of information that we have for going on our Instagram, our social media, and there you can find information about how to submit. Also how to read issue 2. Issue 2 and issue 1 are actually free online. This copy that I'm holding is a copy of the 1st issue. And we accept all kinds of things. You can look, we have poetry, we have essays. It's kind of hard to hold it in the mic at the same time, but so you get the gist. It's actually one of my favorite pieces. It's like an AI piece somebody submitted. Art, essays, anything like that. So if you guys are interested in submitting, we'd really like voices from the psychedelic community to be featured in our magazine, because it's a project we're really proud of. There's not too many psychedelic-oriented publications. So yeah, by all means, it's called Entheoscope, at Entheoscope Magazine on Instagram. Yeah, and if anybody has any questions about how to submit, please come up to me. I'll be right up there. But it's pretty much all the information you'll need is in the bio on the Instagram. And we have a website as well there. So, thank you.
All right, we do have about a half hour, and then we can stay longer if people want to talk to each other, talk to us more. I'm going to play the video real quick, but let's get our team together to speak. Anybody from our team that wants to join that Q&A, Travis, if you want to join, you can. And we'll get everybody up here getting chairs and getting that figured out, and I'll play the video real quick.
Yeah, I'm going to be passing along this sign-up sheet. So if you're interested in joining the volunteer effort, email campaign, video campaign, just anything, these miscellaneous volunteer opportunities, that clipboard is going around. I also have flyers for the event on March 18th, little flyers that I'm going to be handing out. So I don't know logistically how I'm going to do them. I might just walk around and hand them out to people. But if you want a flyer and you see me walking past, just like raise your hand and hand you a flyer.
All right, whenever we're up here, I have no idea what the volume is going to be. I have it pretty low on it right now, so we'll see what happens. Okay, hold on.
When people are seeking reconnection with the natural world in order to heal, survive, and evolve. When people are asking the question, if we are part of the natural world, how can laws restrict our relationship with it? The foundation for these legal barriers is and always has been fear. And if we are part of nature, that fear is the fear of ourselves. Authorities and corporations have denied us our unalienable rights to grow, gather, and gift within communities searching for healing and connection. At this critical crossroads, we can choose to break free. Free from these restrictions, free from their penalties, free from the stigma, free from the alienation, and free from fear. Let us learn from nature, liberate ourselves, and lead our communities into the future with the spirit of love. If we unite behind changing these disastrous and failed laws, our next steps can foster compassion, justice, and cooperation. Decriminalize Nature is here to support you on your journey.
That motion passes unanimously.
Having successfully organized social and political change, we offer mentorship to your local movement. Our evolving framework is decentralized, collaborative, transparent, and open source. So begin the dialogue with us, learn from our experience, utilize our resources that serve you, and adapt those that do not. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. Connect with your local group to get involved. Together, let us reconnect back to Mother Earth and her laws. We only have one Earth. Let us act while there is still time.
All right. I think that hits on the really big point that we're trying to make here is that these policies are fear-based. And yes, it says community up here on the PA. And like Ramsey mentioned, that lobbying power will increase to kind of fear-monger against these policies that are going to allow us to relate to nature as we choose. And I think there's even fear in that, and thinking that we can't govern ourselves, that we can't educate ourselves, and that we can't platform people that are going to teach us how to relate to these medicines in healthy ways. And so I just want to hit on that, and forgot what I was going to say. I'm sorry. Let me pull up something else to have behind us. All right. How should we do this? Is everybody good with where they're sitting, first of all? Are we too smushed, or are we? All right. Del, do you want to kind of moderate? Were you still down to do that?
Sure.
Okay.
We've done a lot of talking. I'm very interested to hear from all of you taking the time.
Sorry, I just want to start like kind of group community. I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry. Community group agreements that just to be respectful, to offer criticism and feedback that's constructive and solution focused, not divisive, and to limit your question to about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes, and we'll limit our answers to about 2.5, 3 minutes. Does anybody want to keep time on that? Anybody able to grab that, and we can kind of just give you a symbol when you're getting close, like 30-second reminder, and then let's try to stop it just so we can get everybody's voices in. I know a lot of people have a lot to say. You can talk to us afterwards. And 2-minute question, 3-minute answer. And I will let, Del take hands.
Please.
Thank you. Let's see, I'm Michael Jacobs. I help run a lot of the campaigns around here. Howdy. I have a comment I'm going to pose as a question to try to cooperate. And that is, yes, why not contact your city council members? I have contacted 2. Neither one knew anything at all about the issue that we're talking about. This was quite a while ago. And I'll talk with the leadership about this later, if you like, but one of those 2 city council members in Boulder also admitted having done mushrooms before. And I think that's very interesting. And they are very approachable. So I just want to encourage you to all know that and to anticipate the opportunity and to take the time to phrase your questions and comments to them carefully and, if possible, record them. And again, thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I just wanted to acknowledge you because he was part of the grassroots of Decriminalize Denver back in the day. He was one of the few who started this, so I just wanted to acknowledge him. Thank you for your
Let's just keep moving. I don't think it's a question.
I'll just state that someone had said on this panel something about talking to the city of Boulder, and that one of their concerns was psilocybin dabs, so there's a lot of education that needs to be done yet still. Canada just...
It's called DMT.
Canada Health today just squashed Therasil's attempt to have psilocybin for end-of-life patients. And so that's a really tough thing to swallow, especially when they say that it's for safety reasons for people at the end of life. There's just not enough research around psilocybin, and we can't make a determination whether it's safe or not to people at the end of the roads. So it's a very large uphill battle. It's great to hear that the folks at Boulder are amendable. So we'll see, but yeah, lots of work to do yet. So, and I'm sorry, you had a question in the back there? Yeah.
I wanted to know if you all currently have anyone who's willing to speak up at this Boulder Bash about using these as medicines, because I would do it.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Yeah, thank you, Chris, for being here. Chris also was part of Decriminalize Denver initiative, and he is an end-of-life patient. And thank you so much for being here today. And we would love to have him at an event on the 18th. Thank you so much. Yes.
Please.
My name is Jacob, and I have a question on kind of like the education aspect. There's so much here to uncover and bring to people. Where do we start? Where do we begin? You know, we talk about psilocybin, that in some cases that's actually already being done. So where do we start with people when there's so many layers to, you know, decriminalizing nature?
I can answer that. Sharing your own story, you know, sharing your own personal story, that's the way to start. You know, like Ramsey was sharing before, like touching people's heart, because people want to know if somebody had an experience with these plant medicines, if how they changed their life, and if you have experience and these plant medicine have changed your life and touched you, like there's nothing more powerful than your own story. And then you can relate them to studies and unlimited science over here that actually has a bunch of information that is ready to be shared. So definitely your own story.
Yeah, I would echo what Andrea said, which is first you start with your own personal stories, because, you know, like a personal testimonial, you know, a person's lived experience, a person's truth, you know, it's very hard to kind of, you know, like reject it or deny it. It was really interesting because when we did this in Ann Arbor, you know, that meeting, that city council meeting that I had mentioned to you where they first introduced the resolution and they voted on it that day, you know, we did get to hear, you know, some commentary from city council members. And one of the things that really convinced one of the city council members was that she had remarked about how a psilocybin company was now trading on the NASDAQ. And that's what it took for her to sense the legitimacy. So, you know, city council people, you know, they come from, city council members, they come from very diverse backgrounds. You know, some of them are scientists, some of them are lawyers, some of them are politicians. So we kind of like have to like check all the boxes, you know, which is why we have like a multi-pronged approach. You know, we start with the personal testimonials, and we talk about the scientific research and the stuff coming out of universities and research institutions. And then we, you know, we ground everything by talking about the indigenous tradition. So having that multi-pronged approach, I think, is a really good way, because, you know, some city council members don't know anything about science. Some city council members, you know, like probably only care about, you know, like the stock market. You know, so we have to kind of like appeal to their sensibilities. But, you know, there's definitely a sequential way of doing it, which of course, just to mirror what Andrea said, which is first we start with personal testimonials and stories.
This came up from city council. They asked us, you know, they told us that we should campaign because a campaign allows us to educate, and we kind of centered that back on calling attention to how many psychedelic entheogen-based organizations there are based out of Boulder and based out of Colorado, how we are kind of like a hub of all of this education. You know, Psychedelic Club is a national nonprofit. It started here in Boulder at CU. They've been doing education for how long? Like
7 years.
7 years. We have the NOAC Society based out of Boulder, or sorry, I think they're based out of Fort Collins. They have people on their board living in Boulder. They've got meetings coming up now all over the state. I remember after I-301 passed, people were flying out from all over the nation to come to those meetings. We have Students for Sensible Drug Policy present here at CU and a couple other universities in Colorado. We have Naropa NAPS, I can't remember what it stands for off the top of my head, sorry. Based out of Naropa Association for Psychedelic Studies, I think, something like that. Sorry.
Global Association of Psychedelic Studies.
Cool. Naropa's got their education. CU's got a couple of groups, CSU, other universities in Colorado. Unlimited Sciences started after I-301. we have us, we have all of these groups, and so if you're a part of any of those groups, expand your outreach to people that, you know, might not understand kind of what your mission is. Maybe I think there's some people that think that we just get together and like take psychedelics together at a meeting, and they have no idea all of the wonderful education that's going on and the speakers that we're bringing out. And so I think, you know, if you're on leadership on any of those groups, ourselves included, like expand your outreach, appeal to people that, you know, might not understand what you're trying to do, and get more people to come to your meetings and to do all of that. And I think we're already doing a really great job with all those groups here, but, you know, use each other as resources.
Elders. We've been doing this for a long time. Indigenous elders, medicine people have been doing this for a long time. We need to be included. They need to be included. We have been doing this for thousands of years. Education we have is deep knowledge from the land. We live in really deep relationship to the land and deep relationship to the medicine, to the spirits. And that will be my answer to that question. There's a lot of new education that we need to know about the system and how we want to work in this system. But we definitely need to create a space for elders to come up here and start speaking and start teaching. Not just in these spaces, but also holding the space of the medicine for many people who are wanting to know or wanting to heal. There's many medicines that are being shared right now by people who have no experience, who have no idea what's happening in those spaces when you open the spirit realm. It's very sensitive, but it's very important that we really are not only caretaking for our own personal healing, but also the community, also the land, also the people around you, also the elders of these lands, and really understanding that the way we approach medicine is by caretaking the medicine, caretaking the spirit. A lot of the facilitation of education that is happening now, it's from a very, very Western perspective, which is very on the physical form. When we work with medicines, we're taking care of the spirit as well. And that's something that is being disregarded in these spaces. So I really want you to think about that. So education, not just about understanding how the medicines work on the physical level, but really what is happening when we open portals. What is happening when we're inviting the spirit to come in and do the healing to us. Medicine for us is not just the physical form, but medicine is everywhere. It's happening all the time. The spiritual realm is here with us. We're contained within the spiritual realm. We really need to step forward into that direction and allow the elders to really teach us, to really show us the way, how we come back to our bodies, how we come back to the land, how we come back to ourselves. And really understand that in my tradition coming from the South, we say that Pachamama is this body. I'm not separated from the earth, you know, so coming back again, elders, 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 1,000 times.
Thank you. Please.
So, Cubensis and psychedelics address the mind and the heart, so the spirit. But the entire kingdom of fungi addresses restoration as a whole. It addresses the water, it addresses the air, it addresses the earth, and it addresses the food. We have protections in your bill, and we're so grateful for those. But speaking of medicine, I am wondering what protections you're extending to the endophytic and arbuscular mycelium that create mycorrhizal pairings to help restore all aspects of the earth. Because those mushrooms are going to be left exposed to certain entities that can then use that science and take it away from the general population. I'm wondering what kind of legislative protections you can put into your language in order to extend having a complete, full human access to the entire kingdom of fungi, because it's not just the mind it addresses. It is the restorational process of the entire system.
Yeah, that's a great question and a difficult one. I don't know, I mean, what I'd state, I mean, if you're saying addressing the fungi kingdom,
Yes.
within a bill like this to protect it, I mean,
Because it's not going to be separated out as just psychedelics. They're going to understand this legislation as a comprehensive way to capture, gatekeep, and expose a potential industry. And the thing is with fungi, is it crosses several industries. It is a multi-billion-dollar piece of our economic future. And it can either be used by us, for us, or it will be used to isolate us. And it will become a massive revenue driver for certain scientific industries that are not necessarily held by scientists and not held by the general population. So it is truly a medicine, but I'm very concerned about the open-endedness inside of our legal system to be able to leave the true restorative process of equity, which is in the land. The equity is not just in our minds, it's in being able to continue our future to allow restoration of the mind. But that only happens if we have water and an earth and air and food. There's a bigger picture besides our mind. I'm wondering what you're going to do to protect the kingdom.
I'd like to say something. Thank you so much. My invitation to you will be that to include yourself into that question.
Oh, God.
What are we going to do? You know, we're here together having this conversation for all of this. You know, this is not an individual liberation, this is a collective liberation. We don't have all the answers, you know. We're brainstorming, we're talking, we're coming together to understand how can we do this within the system that is so oppressive and that has been exploding not only communities, indigenous communities in these lands, but it's exploding everybody. You know, and not only the United States, it's exploding everywhere. You know, so what are we going to do? How do we include ourselves? How do we stop separating ourselves from the solution and the conversations and the community that needs to happen? So we don't know exactly, you know, and I think that's why we're here.
Powerful answer, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of specify, like policy speaking, what we're doing, and then also ask you what organizations do you know that you can connect us with that are doing kind of work like that. But I guess something I didn't hit on that I'm reflecting on now, the reason that we included the medicines that we included, the controlled substances that we included, are because they are at risk for commercialization under things like the Natural Medicine Health Act, under things like House Bill 1116, that are going to set up corporate models for these medicines. Our initiative does not allow for sale. And so what we're doing is, you know, removing the substances that are controlled by the Controlled Substances Act. We're making everything to do with those medicines essentially other than sale no longer a crime. And so it restricts what a corporation can do and empowers what an individual and a community can do. And so I do just want to kind of frame that as far, like we're responding to the Controlled Substances Act and to substances that are controlled in the Controlled Substances Act. So psilocin and psilocybin are controlled, but the fungi is not. Everything, the psilocybin and psilocin is contained within is not part of the Controlled Substances Act. And so I'm wondering, you know, as we go forward and as we organize with more policy in the future, how we could be connected with groups that are doing more broad mycelial work and work in the mycology world.
To my knowledge, the only people who are doing active environmental mycelial work are private scientists that are getting private grants. It hasn't been, shall I say, and I'm sorry, I'm so cold, I'm shivering, so my voice is just shivering. It hasn't been, shall we say, a scientifically safe moment for certain research and certain projects that are very successful, very cheap, and effective right now. The environment has not been friendly for that research to come into full light. There is a massive war against public domain. There is a massive war that the pharmaceutical companies have waged. Agarikon, for one, is an endangered mushroom. It is what we understand to be the key of all antivirals. And there is a war right now being waged on who controls those ancient forests, that mushroom that has the ability to elongate life and to naturally fortify the body against viruses. There's a struggle to take the control over those forests and that land. And there hasn't been a safe environment for an association, a committee, or even a collective of scientists. We meet in secret, we meet in Zoom, trying to exchange research, trying to figure out what we're working on. There hasn't been a safe association, but this question is being asked by scientists, by mics all over the place, that want to know, beyond psilocybin, this is an opportunity to allow a safe umbrella for the rest of the kingdom. And that kingdom, we are discovering at a massive rate, has the ability to wage restoration in a way that we haven't really seen. We do know that the oyster fields can clean up oil spills on the ocean and have zero repercussion. We understand that water can be clarified from E. coli in the Mississippi through mycelial mats. Large agricultural natural delivery systems, that soil can be restored if addressed in a proper way and in a cheap way that has zero repercussions. But there hasn't been a safe association allowed. So we're asking this question to you guys who are already starting it. Is there a chance to offer a blanket for us to be protected, and in so doing, a natural platform for certain scientists to get together in a safe environment to exchange research and potentially build companies that can deliver these systems and offer an extension to the life of the planet, which is essentially what we're talking about here.
Yeah, let's definitely connect about that further afterwards, how we can use our platforms to support each other and all of that. You know, we are, with this policy specifically, you know, revising and responding to the Controlled Substances Act and fighting to reduce criminal penalties for controlled substances. And so it's a little restricted in that sense, just because you're speaking about substances that aren't necessarily in the Controlled Substances Act. So there's just kind of that difference. But as a whole organization, I'd be interested in continuing the conversation of how we can share platforms and do education. Thank you so much for bringing all those points up.
Can I say something? So thank you for saying that protection is so essential. You know, so, and the piece that I just wanted to take back on what you said, I like to hear the word protection, you know, for the land. I like to hear the word protection for indigenous people, you know, as well. I like to extend the protection for everybody who's in this work. You know, it's not an easy work. We're fighting against the system. Me, my community, and I don't speak for indigenous people, but I speak as one of them, as being impacted by the system. And we need also to extend the protection to the caretakers of these medicines in so many different ways. We continue to be killed. You know, we've been killed for thousands of years, and we continue as well, hundreds of years, I'm sorry, decades. And so I want to also bring that up, really understanding that we need to create new ways, that umbrella that is not just critiquing for particular things, you know, moving to a living thing or a living being, right? And protecting also us, indigenous people as well, creating those spaces where we come to these places and we get to talk and express who we are and what we do and feel safe. You know, I come out here and I do have a lot of traumas, and I show up in those ways too. You know, I'm not hiding my traumas. And I think we need to create spaces also to be able to speak about this. You know, we carry a lot within ourselves and we're holding a lot, and it's not an easy path. It's complicated, it's very complex, but I feel that we're doing it. You know, things are moving, things are opening up. I'm an ayahuasquero from the south, and our medicine has been shared for decades now. My elders have told me that they decided to open this medicine to the north and to many other places, even to the cities down in Ecuador, because there's a need for healing, right? So even these medicines were really kept secret for a long time, many medicines, because we understand that they're very powerful, and there's a lot that could happen if they open up all of a sudden, right? So the medicine itself is opening the doors, you know, it's not even us who is opening, it's the medicine who's coming through. Ayahuasca vine for us is anaconda, which is a very gently going down into the earth, coming up, you know, awakening people. And as we do so, we want to find those protections, because we definitely don't want to lose more people in this path, you know. So thank you for naming about the protections, and let's figure it out. Let's brainstorm. Let's collaborate together. So this is a process of collaborating with each other and really understanding how do we find protections, how do we find organizations that can provide those protections.
Sure. Piggyback on my brother was saying, because of that, and because of the presentation from Ramsey and Nicole, we heard that Decriminalize nature had an impact everywhere, right? Like it was huge. But none of these places have, or very few, had indigenous voices included. So the difference between what is happening here in Colorado, especially here in Boulder, is that an indigenous voices group was born. And now we have the opportunity as an indigenous people to have a space. And when we talk about plants, we talk about all the plants, right? We're talking about Mother Nature itself. We're talking about the whole home that we're here, right? And this land is really powerful. Boulder, Colorado, these mountains, this is really powerful. Not for nothing, 48 tribes and plus 48 tribes of indigenous people used to gather here, and have ceremonies here, because this place is a portal itself. So because of all of what is happening with the politics and all of these bills, this Indigenous Voices group was born out of it, and it's merging, and I personally asked for your support for this group, so we can bring elders, we can bring people from the jungle, we can bring people from Ecuador, we can bring people from Peru, we can bring people even from my land, all the way from Chile, you know, where my people have also been displaced, right, and their land taken away, and then we can unite on what are we doing to heal ourselves so we can move forward with the transformation that is happening, this new era that is happening, that Mother Nature is in ascension, right? And that we are all being called to do the inner work, but in alignment with the sacred way, with the traditional way. So just wanted to share that I guess I'm supposed to say this in my introduction at the beginning, but I didn't. And I wanted to acknowledge my brother over there, Tevi, my sister over there, and Dana, who are part of Indigenous Voices, and this group is merging and is taking time to create the foundation so we can actually have an impact not only for this generation, but for the generation just to come.
Hi, I'm Chris. For those of you who haven't met me, I'm a reporter from Denver. I have just two quick questions. One, what's the timetable for the Boulder initiative? Like, when are you planning on approaching City Council? Like, when is the timetable of when you'd like to get that passed, potentially?
We've spoken with City Council several times over the last, while since we've organized this, and we are hopeful that something can be passed this year. We need all of your support in contacting them and doing all of the things that Ramsey asked and that Ramsey was speaking up to. We'll talk about this at our event on the 18th. Three things can happen. Either they will pass a resolution for us, we help with the language, they sponsor it, they vote on it to pass through a hearing. They put us on the ballot directly, so we don't petition. They put us on the ballot, or we petition to be on the ballot. Within the next month or so is kind of the time frame we have to submit language to campaign in Boulder in 2022. So there could be potentially this on the ballot in Boulder in 2022, as well as a statewide initiative. Yeah. What was the other? Sorry. Hold on one second. I just want to time check everyone that it is 8 o'clock. We'll keep going for a little bit, but if anyone was needed to hard stop at 8, it's 8.
Yeah. So in terms of timeline, a lot of that is just gonna depend on how things unfold. With community, it'll be more expedited if community shows up strong. If community shows up, this could be done by next month. This could be, you know what I'm saying? So what we experienced in Ann Arbor was we thought this was going to be like a months-long battle. We thought this was going to be a years-long battle. We thought that, we were going to, be in it for the long fight. And then when they introduced the resolution and they voted on it that day and it was all over with, we were in shock. We had no idea it was going to be over so soon. We thought we were going to be doing this for months or years or however, but community showed up. and we were able to expedite this, to a very strong degree. So it honestly does depend on community. It depends on you. It depends on you. It depends on everybody here and the rest of the community to kind of like show up, step to the plate, and and be activated. And I think that's where it's going to boil down to.
Yeah, actually that is kind of related to my next question, which is this like, you're taking on a lot, right? You're doing both a Boulder, you have like a Boulder initiative and the statewide initiative. So how are you going to balance your efforts between those two?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So what's happening locally in Boulder and what's happening statewide are parallel projects. So, in terms of balancing, that's just a matter of, they really operate on different modalities. The Boulder initiative is going to really be in the hands of the community. What happens statewide, there's going to be, a little more like bureaucratic stuff to go through, such as collecting signatures and petitioning and all that stuff. So, they kind of are, like separate and parallel projects that will kind of synergize with each other. And I think the most ideal scenario is, something passes locally, first, in the next, month, 3 months, something like that. And then November comes around, there's a ballot on the statewide, there's something to vote on the statewide ballot. And then, that momentum, that precedent of something being passed in Boulder will kind of like feed into the enthusiasm and the precedent for the statewide. So I hope that answers your question, that there are parallel projects that are happening in tandem.
And I think that the momentum behind what we're doing at the statewide level has only helped us at the local level. It's brought tons more people out. It's caused a lot more conversations to start and to happen, and those kinds of things that we just weren't reaching when we were speaking to the local level. What's carrying around another petition that says a similar thing, just in Boulder.
And I'd also like to add that there's Decrim Nature Colorado Springs, there's groups in Fort Collins as well, Aspen. So together, collectively, we're really hoping that, if you know anyone in the state of Colorado that also wants to be involved, that this is an invitation to definitely come and be part of the movement. And together, we're stronger and we can mobilize and we can organize.
Real quick, before the next question, does anybody know where the clipboard is with the sign-up sheet?
Up here.
Up there. Okay, thank you.
I have a follow-up question. So how we are talking about the city of Boulder, whereas it's Boulder County, decriminalized Boulder County. How do the two relate? Because one is bigger than the other.
Okay. Yeah, can I answer it actually?
Yeah, go for it.
So we organize that way because Boulder County is all under the jurisdiction of the same district attorney. And whereas City of Denver District Attorney's jurisdictions, there's a huge overlap. And we wanted to kind of be a hub and a resource for other cities in Boulder County to pass something through their city council. And so we've had a couple times other cities, get momentum and then kind of die out. And so we just organized countywide to be a hub that way. We have considered something that would be countywide policy. We were working on at one point, trying to pass something that way that didn't work out. But it's just kind of to show that the community is organized that way, and then whatever policy can happen in Boulder County, that we're going to try to make it happen.
And I'll just add one more thing. So again, speaking to my experience in Ann Arbor, so we got the City Council of Ann Arbor to vote to pass this resolution. And very shortly after, the county DA, the district attorney of the whole county of Washtenaw County in Michigan, saw what happened in Ann Arbor and was like, hey, you know what? The people spoke, so the prosecutor declared that he would not pursue any prosecutions for the possession, cultivation, XYZ of entheogens in the entire county of Washtenaw. So winning on the city level, kind of percolated upwards to the county level. So I think that was a really awesome thing that we also weren't expecting. And then a year later, Ann Arbor had a big rally called the Entheo Fest, where the DA spoke publicly at this rally in favor of decriminalization, there was a state representative who spoke in favor of decriminalization and a state senator who spoke in favor of decriminalization. So, you know, there's this kind of effect where what happens on the citywide level can kind of like percolate upwards and affect the county level. And, you know, that's another thing we're shooting for. So if we win on Boulder, I think the DA here in Boulder County would probably, we're hoping, echo a similar sentiment that they would just stop prosecuting the countywide level.
He did tell us that he doesn't like to pick and choose where to enforce laws, and so something that was passed in Boulder would be echoed throughout the county. And there also is, I think in most resolutions, they've added something in that says, you know, the city council, by passing this resolution, is, you know, alerting or pressuring, or I can't remember what the wording is, the district attorney and, you know, state representatives and everybody to prioritize decriminalization policy. So it is, in some ways, it can be a formal statement of support that then tells those next levels to support.
I will add something to that. You may ask yourself, why then we didn't decriminalize nature? Boulder didn't put an initiative before decriminalize nature Colorado, and only Decriminalize Nature Colorado now has an initiative already submitted, which is Initiative 61. And the reason is because another group of people who were approached by out-of-state corporation put in an initiative on the ballot, and their interest is not for the people, it's not for community, it's not for Mother Nature. So out of response to that initiative is that Decriminalize Nature Colorado was born and submitted the Initiative 61. And that's why it happened before even Boulder. But the idea was to have Boulder first and then move in the other hierarchy, like the pyramid, right? But because this other meeting with this other group of people were happening closed door, and very handpicked people for over a year, it was out of a surprise for a lot of people actually who were part of Decriminalize Denver, right? That we didn't know this was happening and that there were interest from out of the state. And that was really concerning. So that's why Decriminalize Nature Colorado said, okay, let's respond with something else so people have an option. And I don't know if you would like to say anything about that, Travis?
I mean, I can only speak to my personal experience. Is this on?
Yeah. Yes.
I was leadership on 301, and there was this spirit about what we did. It was very rooted in community and connectivity, and one of my efforts after we decriminalized was to assist in the community response to what decriminalization looks like, and I co-founded the Denver Mushroom Cooperative. And I really never left the trenches that I was in while I was collecting signatures or knocking doors, as far as spreading this ideology that really has two pillars around mitigating the associated risks with the medicine and maximizing the benefits. We were told, leadership was told that we were going to be involved with whatever was going to roll out, and all of a sudden just communication stopped. And then I'm going to tell my personal story here. I found out that there was a stakeholder meeting, and that the stakeholder group did not include anybody from the community or anybody that was really taking the medicine seriously, or it was very aggravating. So I raised a big fuss and I landed myself in this space, and I realized that I wasn't with community. And it really struck me that someone that marched on the front lines with me and was there in it for Decrim First shifted their opinion. And all of a sudden I was in this space and I didn't want to be there. So out of frustration, out of venting, I communicated with other people that are involved in the movement, and the My Coalition was born out of that. And that is a group of like-minded people that want to represent the community interests and to really, really, really bring the indigenous voice back to what we're doing. And
those My Coalition meetings are where this initiative that we've proposed was born. They originally organized to sort of include community on statewide policy, Natural Medicine Health Act, and in that process of being told community was included, being told community was heard, there was a substantial amount of us that did not feel like that was happening and that we needed to have our own initiative on the table, and so that's, you know, where this came from. Just time check, are we good with like 2 more questions? It's freezing cold, literally. We are outside.
Yeah.
I just want to say I appreciate what you all are doing to give voice for these plants, and knowing that mushrooms, when they're, you know, accepted and they're sold, they have a resiliency to being grown in a dark room, something like that. Even ayahuasca is $1 billion industry that only a small percentage goes to indigenous people, right? So very small, like 3% or less, right? Something very small of it all. And so thinking about peyote, which it looks like that's a symbol, maybe I'll touch on this, and I didn't hear it before, but knowing this plant takes 40 years to mature at kind of a minimum. Is there a sense of protecting that plant from, oh, now it's decriminalized and people are going to start really seeking that plant out for recreational purposes or something like that? I really believe in this plant in an indigenous context, and so I just want to speak to that.
Our proposed initiative does not include peyote.
Oh, it doesn't.
It includes mescaline, which is scheduled separate. The whole peyote plant is scheduled, and then mescaline is scheduled as well. And so when we talked about the initiative, we talked about that the psychoactive compounds are scheduled. And then in addition to that, the entire peyote plant is scheduled, much like the entire cannabis plant is scheduled. But mescaline would be pertaining to the other 70-something cacti that contain mescaline that are not any of the peyote types.
Not so much a question, just kind of maybe something to bring attention to. Since we want to, keep this for people, I think we should be aware of intellectual property and maybe the war that could be waged and that to negatively impact us as the people. And in that, like, try and have public publications if things are discovered and like have the community effort to like really get that information out there, so some big corporate donor doesn't come in there and with their patent attorneys and just try and own it all from a intellectual perspective if they can't, try and own it from a legal perspective. So I just want to bring aware of that. I'm not sure what the battle is on that necessarily. I think of nonprofits and like funding people to get it out or have people that have already experienced write something about it. Just want to bring awareness to that, because that's another place where they can slip in and try and take away.
Essential, is what you're saying. I personally would like to see within the system, and this is just coming from my heart, but I don't really fully understand it as well. The system is something that it's very complex for me. I'm new to the U.S., been here for 20-something years, but it's still very new to me. I'm still learning to navigate around the system where I'm deeply impacted daily. My heart wishes that indigenous knowledges move into the system with those protections. Intellectual property, if you want to say it, so before anybody else within the system can claim any of these things. So definitely something that we should consider as we move forward. How do we, again, going back to protections, how do we within the system create protections for what is already being for so many generations, and how do we protect that? And not only the knowledge, but the people. Again, I go back to the people. And I go back, because when I speak to the people, for us, as I mentioned before, we don't see ourselves separated from the earth, from the place. for us, in my experience, we're an expression of nature. We're nature itself. You know, in many of our cultures down in the South, there's actually not a word for nature because we're nature. So we never created that separation for us, right? So I think those are like a lot of the questions that we need to talk and really find ways within the system how to protect what is already being given by nature for a long time so that these corporations don't take benefit or appropriate, you know, big word appropriate. They continue to extract and really take great frameworks so that they can exploit, you know. So just wanted to name that and thank you. We don't know yet, but hopefully we're moving to something like that.
Thank you. One more?
Young lady in the back.
Well, it's also a comment, and it touches on a lot of what Lumi said and some of y'all here. But I want to bring in the voice for the plants too. And so I'll just share a little bit about, so it's pretty layered here, so I'll do my best to convey it in the best way. But I think what comes with decriminalization is doing education around how to use these medicines responsibly, where to go, who to talk to, and all these layers of how to be in a relationship with them. And so something that I want to bring is like with the cannabis, what I'm concerned about is, you know, I've been talking to elders and they've been saying, well, the corporations, the people that have money, it's probably going to pass, which is why I'm definitely for decriminalization first. There's a real possibility that it's going to happen, and my concern there is that working and having a relationship with all plants, whether it's Tulsi or Rose or, you know, I worked in Denver and we have, it's called Herbs and Arts, but it's one of the largest apothecaries in the US, and we have about 300 plus herbs there. So every day our herbalists would help people with like chronic conditions, cancer, and they would heal, you know, and that's the danger for these companies to come in and make their synthetic version or start making, like what happened with cannabis, right? It's like when I was in high school, I was smoking like 3 to 6% THC, like shot weed from Mexico, right? It was crap. And now the lowest that I could find in the last couple of years was like 26 to 28% THC. And it's filled with insecticides and fungicides and herbicides. And they just keep making these extracts. So this is where I feel like it's going to get a little dangerous if these companies come in and make their synthetic or really potent extracts, is that it's less and less plant and plant-centered. And in herbalism, you know, the way that plants work, just one plant alone has more or less hundreds of constituents that work together to bring balance in the body. It's not just one thing. It's not just one extract. It's not one chemical that's doing the healing. And it works on your body systemically. So they're gradual. They work slower than a pill that you take, but they're going in and they're balancing your entire body. So I saw that over and over, and so I want to advocate for, you know, if we do start seeing, if, you know, this regulated model does pass along with decriminalization, that we know that the best form will be just the plant itself, unaltered. No extracts, nothing dangerous to get. You know, with marijuana, it's like the craziest high you can get, or get higher than this. Now I'm seeing, you know, the last I know is like dabs. I tried it once and I had a panic anxiety attack, and I saw my brother go through that too, because it's so altered from its natural version that they're causing harm now. You know, so I want to make sure that we're aware of that too, that there's education that's coming with decriminalization. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. You're hitting on the importance of decriminalized cultivation, removing criminal penalties for people who are cultivating. So can we cultivate in our homes? Can we cultivate in our communities? So that the plants and the fungi are able to be plentiful, and that we're removing that scarcity model that the corporate models create. Decriminalize Nature's stance and motto on this is grow, gather, and gift. And so our policies for protecting the growth, protecting the cultivation, and protecting the sharing and the gifting without allowing for sale. And so you're hitting on kind of where that's expressed in policy and why that education is so important. And then when we talk about these policies, to always frame it in that way so that it's known that our intention here is that people, individuals, and communities can grow these medicines themselves, can learn how to grow them themselves, and can learn, you know, if there are sustainability issues in the way that they're, you know, acquiring these medicines and obtaining them, that's not, you know, helpful to the earth, that's problematic, and that how are we platforming people to give that education, and then to also educate that there are risks involved in the synthetic forms, risks to the plants themselves. And so it's protects decriminalization of cultivation, grow, gather, gift.
Yeah, can I add something to that? It's exactly what happened with tobacco, right? Like a sacred plant. Now we know what it does, right? And it's the plant itself doing that to what you were sharing the other day. Like it's the plant itself doing that because it's out of its natural form. And that this is why it's so important that we listen to indigenous voices. This is why it's so important we learn from the people who have been taking care of this plant for centuries, through generation and generation and generation. And not only plant medicine, but all herbs are healing. Mother Nature itself is healing, right? And it's super, super important that also those who want to learn, to cultivate, they learn from the right people, that they go to the ayahuasqueros and they go to the people who have this knowledge and they've been passing down in the right way, the sacred way. And that's where protection comes in, and this is also where community comes in. Because if we have these spaces, we can talk about the things, we can learn from each other, we can bring people who knows, who carries the knowledge, and we can all nourish ourselves, and we can all come back to nature and come back to that connection that doesn't separate us from it, which is that we are nature ourselves and we are part of it. And as we heal and we evolve, we are moving with the rhythm of Mother Nature itself.
Thank you. Gabby, thank you so much for naming that. Something that I just wanted to name that I'm seeing here already, and I think this is essential for all of us, going back to the first question about education, this is what is happening here right now. This is what is happening right now, and this is what we want to continue to make it happen. I would like to see council members, politicians, Senate members, people who actually are within the system, who has a lot of power, that come and sit with us. Just listen. Listen to us, because they need to be educated. The reality that I see is that Western society is a fairly new society. It lacks understanding. There's a lot of ignorance that we have, and not from a negative point of view, but like there's a lot of ignorance happening in our society. And having these spaces is where we can come in and bring our knowledge and brainstorm around, again, what do we do, right? So thank you, Gabby, for naming that, because a lot of the things that we want to communicate in these spaces is people who don't understand the spirit, people who don't understand the plants, people who don't understand yet, they do have the possibility to actually learn. And that's my hope, that we get to learn, that we get to listen. You know, because we do a lot of things without really listening. And not just listening to each other, but listening. Nature is talking to us all the time. Talking to us all the time. I don't know if you saw me when I was like praying. I'm watching the spirits flying around. You know, I'm really watching a lot of things happening here. And that's a lot of the work that my ancestors did and we continue to do. We're always in relationship to what's happening, the unseen. We lost the faculty, we were deprived from our roots so that we don't get to see what's really happening here. So we're being educated right now. And a lot of what I speak right now, it's not even just me. There's a lot of knowledge and wisdom that my ancestors that inhabit my body are still here. My ancestors are not in the past, they're here with me. They're talking to me, I'm never alone. And my hope is that everybody gets to reconnect to the roots, so that you reconnect to your ancestors and they get to talk to you. And when you get to listen to them, you will listen to the earth, you will listen to the birds, to the trees, to the water, and understand that we are sacred, that all of this creation is sacred. because we lost contact to it. And it's when everybody talks about illusion, for me that's the illusion. We live in this illusion that we're disconnected, but we're not. So we're finding our way back home so that when we are in relationship, we're not using medicines. We are in relationship, it's dual. It's a reciprocity that is happening with the medicine. So that we're carrying and taking care of the medicine, and the medicine is taking care of us. What my sister spoke about before is something that I mentioned a few days ago. What happened with tobacco? Tobacco for me and my community, we're tabaqueros purgativos, which means that we are in a relationship with tobacco, which is a sacred plant for us, and we welcome that medicine in our systems for different reasons. Because the relationship to that medicine heals us in different ways and help us to connect to nature. And you can see everybody smokes cigarettes all the time. Tobacco, spirit in that form has been corrupted, you know, and spirit is actually flipping back towards us and causing harm, you know, causing tumors, sickness, illnesses. And it's actually the spirit who's talking back to our bodies and saying, if you're not listening to me, if you're not seeing me, I want you to feel what it feels when you're being misused and used, right? So a lot of what we feel is because the spirit is actually calling us out. So paying attention to that is so important, and understanding that it's not just a plant or a chemical substance in a plant, but it's actually the spirit form that is always there with us, right? So going back to God is so essential, you know, because we're not doing this just for us. We need to move away from that white colonial perspective that says, I want to do this for my own benefit. But really understanding that it's for the benefit of everything that exists, because we're coexisting here.
I think that's time.
We did have somebody that
drug policy in Boulder, and we actually have a symposium, a psychedelic and cannabis symposium that we're planning for April 16th. I want to invite all of you guys to it. We can figure out how to get you guys the Zoom link. It's going to be an all-day event, and we are looking for a closing speaker if anyone is interested. I would love to speak to you, and I know you are speaking. You are speaking, and I would love to speak to you about closing. It's going to be a really cool event, and we're really excited about it. But yeah, you guys should all attend. It's going to be like this, but longer. Yeah. Thanks.